Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of SmithWeekly, including Nick W., Craig S., Jackie A., and Andy S. On the program today is a returning guest and a new company that will be introduced. Mr. Chris Buncic is back on the podcast. Chris is the president and CEO of Condor Resources. The company is focused on silver, copper, and gold exploration project generation, as well as in-house exploration on various projects in Peru. Condor has existing exploration partners including Teck, Chakana Copper, and Element 79. The company is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol CN, as well as on the US OTC markets under the symbol CNRIF. Chris, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Chris, it's great to have you back. I'd like to have you kick this off here because this is a new company. Let's start with that. We'll come back to the market in a moment, but why don't we start this off with you giving us a quick overview of Condor Resources? I'm assuming Condor is new to a lot of our audience, and then we'll take it from there.
Great. Yeah, no, that sounds very good. Condor Resources actually been around for the past 20 years, and it may be unknown to a lot because it has, for at least the last 15 years, been a project generator. And that's, always been an interesting model, not really one that I think has always garnered a lot of favoritism from the market. It really depends on bull or bear markets. And currently, I think the strategic thinking is to get away from this project generator model. And so we've got two fantastic projects, which I'm very happy to be advancing here, both Putumayo and Winac Punta, which we can get into later. We have a number of projects we've already partnered out, and you listed some of those. So Corberarco, Soledad, and Lucero are those three projects to our partners, Teck, Chakana Copper, and Element 79, respectively. And then there's a whole host of projects that have been hand selected really over the last 15 years. And so the team came together back in really, well, firstly, 2004. The company started off and had a couple of projects in Argentina and Chile, and then over time migrated into Peru. And that's when Ever Marquez came on board, and he's our VP exploration. And Ever is an award-winning geologist. He comes from Newmont and Newcrest. While he was at Newmont, he discovered the Brea Pampa mine, which went on to produce multi-million ounces of gold for Newmont and later Buenaventura. And so, very successful mine there. And Ever is based in Lima, and over the course of, the last 15 years has really hand selected the projects that the company has today. And so they're all in good locations, relatively close to the coasts, excellent geologic potential, whether it be for precious metals or base. They're all good projects in their own right at various stages of exploration. The company has done a good job in partnering these off over time, retaining economic interest in the three that we have partnered off today. But really, I think we're shifting away from that model of doing a lot of the legwork up front and then partnering it off so that another company can go and advance the project to one where we are advancing these projects ourselves. And the reason being that we really like Putumayo and Winac Punta as the two projects that we're going to move forward with at the company. And so there are a number of catalysts on the horizon with those projects. And so we can get into that. But, I think it's timely that we're talking about this because again, a couple of things are going to come to pass over the course of the next month or two, and then we'll be into drilling season, and we expect to have a very newsy 12 months on the horizon here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think in some camps, obviously, the dual strategy can work okay with some of those projects that maybe can't get that attention or maybe can't be funded in these market conditions. And if you're able to get some cash out of some of those projects through that partnership, it helps to float the company as well. With that, I think it's good. We should talk market for a moment here, Chris. Just as far as how you see things out there right now, the sentiment for juniors is, for a lot of them, quite bad. Capital raising can be quite difficult depending on who you are and what you're up to. what do you think still works out there in these tough market conditions? The only thing I can think of, Chris, is company specific success on its strategy and then also exploration success. But talk about the market and how you're seeing this going.
I think right now it's very much bifurcated between companies that have very good projects and the others. And I think that a good project will always get funded. The challenge that is faced right now by the junior market is really getting the attention of investors. And we've got, I guess we've gone through a period where there's been a lot of speculation in sectors other than junior mining, which frankly has eaten up a lot of that capital, that risk capital. Those investors that are looking for, high returns on taking a shot on resource stories, or frankly marijuana, or mushrooms, or crypto, or blockchain, or whatever the case may be, right? So we're unfortunately in the junior resource market fighting for the same capital, which makes it challenging. But that doesn't mean there aren't areas where you can go for excellent projects. And of course, there are groups and family offices and high net worth individuals and funds that are still around deploying capital that are educated in the ways of resource companies, exploration. And so that's a knowledge that they can lean on to make good investments. I think that really the good projects will always get funded. And right now, we've just come off, the first financial reporting season from all the majors at these elevated commodity price levels. And I think that's having a positive effect, a spillover effect into some of the smaller, some of these smaller companies. And I think that's going to continue. I mean, you can track the prices, and it's a matter of time until those investment dollars migrate from the majors, which are cash flowing, down towards some of the mid caps and juniors. I mean, the mid caps are moving too. It's a matter of liquidity as well, right? So I think that, as the liquidity picks up, junior stocks become more investable. Commodity prices are still high. All of those are a tailwind here. I think the tide really does float all boats to a large degree, but you'll see those projects that are really exceptional getting funded first. I'm very excited about the two that I've mentioned. I think that these are two of the best projects that we can be advancing. So I think we'll certainly benefit from all of this in the short term. Really, I think that the commodity prices are really at a level, and the lack of inventory of all commodities, of course, but they're really good projects to advance is really going to pique the interest of a lot of the majors. And you're starting to see some of that M&A happen. It's maybe not moving down towards the juniors as much as I would have expected already. But I mean, that's always a good sign that these educated minds are looking to increase their resources at the corporate level, having to go out and buy additional resources for lack of exploration dollars over the last decade or so.
Thank you for the comments, and I think those are some good points to bring up. And I do think it will cascade down into the junior markets. It's just that it's an issue of time and solvency, and then also just having those conditions play out. And we know they will. It's just that they're going to play out probably to their own story in the time between as we talk now, where sentiment is versus in the future. But I do.
And it happens slowly until it's not so slow anymore, right? You see very quickly kind of that explosive growth that can happen in a very short period of time, when suddenly sentiment changes and it's all back on again, and life is grand, right? So people forget the pain. People forget the pain that goes into the years ahead of that, and I guess that's the way our minds are programmed, to forget pain. But it's definitely challenging in the short term.
Of course, then you have global markets that overshadow this as well, and some of the challenges out there. So that certainly plays into this. We've seen this many times already, and so that can impact as well. So it's just always a matter of trying to put all those pieces together, but certainly we'll get down the road here. Back to Condor, why don't we look at capital structure first, Chris? Cover off for us the cash on hand at the company and how far down the road we get on cash, and then also shares outstanding and the major shareholders at the company, including yourself and management.
Sure. So we've got about $3 million in working capital, and that includes cash on hand of just under $1 million. We've got money we're expecting to come in from our partners here at Teck Resources, Chicana, and Element 79 over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. And that kind of rounds out that 3 million number. We have 141 million and change shares outstanding, 147 million on a fully diluted basis. Stock's trading around 18 cents, so we're 25 million market cap. But when I look at the amount, the number of assets, the number of projects, the work on the go by other partners, I really feel like that valuation is not only backstopped by what the company has right now. It very much overlooks where we can go with these projects in the future. I think that right now we've been trading sideways for a number of months here, and that's based on a very supportive shareholder base that's waiting to see what comes next, because we're moving, we're getting active, and there are exciting things on the horizon. We did have a run up last year on expectations at one of the projects, and I think that while the project was successful from a technical perspective, maybe a little bit disappointing from the headline numbers on our first drill program at Putumayo, and believe me, we've learned a lot about it since, but that was just our first program. The stock came back down to around 15 to 20 cents, and so we're headed sideways. We've got a very supportive shareholder base, as I mentioned. We've got Crescat Capital is in for 15 to 20%. I'm not exactly sure what their current holding is today, but we continue to talk to them, and they're supportive of the projects and they're supportive of the company. Management and insiders own about 18%, and that includes friends and family. And then I've got a number of relationships with brokers that I can count, where there's an additional 25% among brokers. So it's fairly broadly held. It's people are being patient, and I think there's a real upside here on some of these milestones as we deliver.
It's always a bit of a balancing act on cap structure here, especially in these market conditions, and trying to time that right with hopefully some company-specific success. And in your guys' case, preferably at the in-house drill bit, if you will, on the projects that you guys are advancing in-house. I think the market can appreciate that. With respect to, Chris, some of the staffing there that's at the company, specifically the exploration team, and then also just the folks who are supporting you and the company, anybody you want to highlight there that should be brought up?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, Ever is really driving the bus on the exploration side from Lima. He's got a team of 4 people. We're all based in Lima. That it has really been a strategic advantage for the company over time. And so, there are a lot of juniors who are in Peru who don't have boots on the ground. And I think that's to their detriment. I mean, one of the great things that the company has had over the last 15 years is the ability to build and maintain the relationships with community. And so that's, a focus of the team based in Lima. And that's really helped as we've kind of moved things along in areas where there's been an education required for the locals as to what it means to have a company come into the neighborhood and do some exploration. And I think that really helped with certainly last year with Putumayo. That education takes time, takes years. There's a relationship that's built over time. And then, we kicked off our drill program there. And, this year we went back to renew the DIA, which is the drill permit, in an area to the southeast. And so, this time through that process, it was a breeze because, everyone was supportive and knows what we can do in terms of cleaning up and after the exploration program, of course, and supporting the community in the meantime. So that's one of the benefits of having a team on the ground in Peru. We've got a very experienced board. I think that at the company, we've got myself on the executive team, along with Ever. We've got Graham Scott, who's a mining lawyer by trade and a geologist by training as well. He's our corporate secretary. He's also a corporate lawyer by day. And then Jonathan is our fractional CFO. So we're looking to keep it very light at the top. Our directorship, we've got a great team here. Robert Boyd is from Endurance Gold. He's the CEO there. He's also on the board of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. So Robert's got a very deep industry knowledge. He's been around for a very long time, has great networks. Paul Arkin is on the board. Paul's got a corporate finance background, has been very involved in deals over the years, knows the industry well. Quinton Henney joined the board again recently, and he's important in that he's got a great following. He's an excellent geologist. He's been in a number of successful deals. He's a strategic advisor to Crescat, and is very supportive of our projects here. He was on the board a number of years ago and came off when Crescat when he joined them, and he's able to join now, yeah, having checked off with compliance, of course, and everything's great there. Now, Quinton actually worked with Ever back in their Newmont days. And so they've got a very good relationship and they're very supportive of each other. So it's great to have Quinton back. And I think he does a great job of explaining what the upside of these projects are. That really rounds out the team. We've got, lastly, just Francisco de Andaraga as an investor and a Chilean businessman based down in Santiago and has supported the company for a long time. So, we're very much light and lean, experienced, and pretty much rowing all in the same direction at the same time. So I'm, excited that it's a great team to be involved with. I'm new. I just arrived April 1st. And so, but I've come into a company that's very well organized in terms of where we're headed, and the projects are fantastic. And that's the key, is that you can have a great team and all of that, but if you don't have a project that makes sense, that doesn't have the upside, then that's the challenge. I'm glad to say that that's not the case here. We've got fantastic assets that we can advance.
Chris, talk a little bit about your coming on board here. Obviously, you had to look at this. You were a free agent. You had lots of opportunities in your pipeline. Why did you take this particular job?
I think it really came down to the assets in the team. And so looking at Putumayo, it's a very large lithocap alteration on surface, and it's got a whole hell of a lot of smoke that is really pointing towards the potential for a gold discovery here. And so there's a lot of torque in the story. And so I think that if we're successful at Putumayo, then you and I will be talking a year from now, and it'll be a very different conversation. So I'm very excited about the project. Ever's background is really phenomenal. He's a great ore finder. And so he's had a lot of discoveries. He knows Peru like the back of his hand. He's walked all these properties. And so just great discussions with them. And then, really the first conversation I had with the board when we were first coming together was the potential of the company and where we were going to take it. And getting away from the project generator model was something that was important to me. I think that there's an inherent issue, or not issue, but it's just not, it doesn't feel good when you're working so hard on a project. You've spent years developing it to get it through the permitting process. You've done all the community work. You've done some limited exploration, and then you're signing up a deal to give away the juice, right? So I'm excited that we're going to be keeping the juice at Winayak Punta and Putumayo, and there's going to be great upside at those two projects. And so, I think the company's done a fantastic job of the deals they've done so far. I think that the Cobre Arco joint venture with Teck done last year was very smart, in that it's a very large copper porphyry skarn target, copper gold porphyry skarn target that is outcropping its surface. It's 2.5 kilometers wide. It's got so many things going for it. But it's just too big for a junior to drill off. These are going to be very expensive holes, very deep holes. It's outcropping its surface, but they're still going down to 1,000 meters per hole, I would estimate. And so that's not the kind of deposit you want to be drilling off as a junior. So I think the joint venture with Teck was very smart. They'll be earning into 75% over the course of up to 6 years from the day they get their permit. By spending $10 million in the ground and paying us 1.1 million US. And so that is a case where the generator model or the joint venture model worked quite well. I think that there's, other than that, there's a great amount of upside of the projects that we're going to explore ourselves, which are more of these gold epithermal type targets that are much more shallow and feasible for our consumption. And so, and we'll see where we go from there. We were going to talk about a little bit priorities for the company and exploration. And I think that while the company's been focused on Peru, we're certainly open to other opportunities. And so I think that's important as well, is that, we are opportunistic. We are looking for where, unfortunately the resources don't come to you. And Peru is a fantastic jurisdiction. There is a lot to be done in Peru. Peru is a great place from a regulatory perspective for mining. Permitting is certainly improving over time, as it has been over the past couple of years under the past year under the new mining minister. And so number 3 for copper, number 8 for gold. Peru's fantastic, but there are other places where, there might be opportunity, and we're certainly open to looking at those things as well.
Chris, thank you for that. And yeah, I do want to come back and talk a little bit more on jurisdiction in a moment, and also talk a little bit more broadly about Peru and where it stands there, and get your comments a little bit more detailed there. But just while we're on the joint venture partners, if you will, why don't we just take a few moments here and have you cover off what is in place? You talked about Teck a little bit here, but talk about what is in place as far as the joint ventures, and if you see anything coming out of these, say over the next 6 to 12 months on those partners advancing. You've got Element 79 and also Chicana Copper. Just talk about what you see coming out of the partner work, say in the next 6 to 12 months.
Look, I think the first thing to flag here is the Teck joint venture. So Teck is driving the bus on this project. I mentioned the commercial terms earlier, and so they're doing everything from the social aspects up through all of the technical work, and they're going to be applying for their DIA imminently, which is the process. You basically have to go through community consultation periods. You've done all your environmental studies and a lot of other technical work, and so they are any day now going to be applying for that DIA. And so that can take 4 to 6 weeks to get through the ministry from a bureaucratic perspective. And then once that's in place, then you can start your drill program. And so we'd expect that maybe by, call it mid-November, they're going to have their DIA and be able to start work on the process, on the project. And so that'll be very important for us, because we don't have a co-spend requirement until they've earned into their 75%. So we're very, very much looking forward to seeing the results coming out of Corberarco. And I mentioned that's a great project because it is a 2.5 kilometer wide anomaly outcropping at surface in very broad swaths. It's a large skarn system with a porphyry component, outcropping with gold and silver. Anywhere the copper and gold. The copper is 0.1 to 1.8% copper in the grab samples from surface at those outcrops across that broad swath. And then the actual geophysics, there's a very large magnetic anomaly that looks like, you can see it on our website or in our presentation, but a very large target that's got a round ring of the iron containing skarn mineralization with an intrusive porphyry in the middle. So it looks like this donut, which is a very kind of textbook image of this kind of a deposit. And I mentioned it's outcropping at surface, 2.5 kilometers wide, more than 1 kilometer deep from surface, and so it can be very large. And I think Teck is very eager to get in and explore this as well. We're hearing from their team that they feel this is one of their great opportunities in Peru, and so we're expecting great things to come from that project. So firstly, the milestone there is DIA followed by drilling activity, and we're expecting both of those things in the fourth quarter. And so that'll be news that we're able to put out as the minority partner, a presumptive minority partner over time. And I think that'll be very important for the Condor story as it develops over the next 12 to 18 months. The second the section option agreement that I'll talk about is the Lucero option. That's on a gold property that Element 79 has done a deal with a company that going back a few years here. This is epithermal deposits of gold and some silver. It's in Arequipa, so it's in a great jurisdiction. They have this is going to be their focus. They've got a large project here at Lucero. They also have another concession in Nevada they're looking to advance, but I know that this is their biggest focus right now. There's some toll milling that they're doing, so they're looking to get into cash flow relatively quickly. And in order for them to earn into this project, it's effectively cash payments that are going to be coming to us. So we've got a $1 million cash payment coming at the end of this year, followed by a cash payment next year. And so that'll see them earn into 100% of the project. We'll retain an NSR on the project, and that'll kind of complete that transaction over time. But they've got a very interesting project on their hands, and of course, they're looking at high grade gold. There's artisanal mining in the area that's very supportive of where they're taking this, and so that's one that's going to benefit us in the short term as well. I think that's more of a kind of mid-term story in terms of when we start to see the benefits there. And then the third one is Chicana Copper with the Soledad project. Chicana is looking to expand their resources across the project with a lot of wildcat drilling they've been doing, exploring these tourmaline breccias and down towards some targets they have found that are south of the concessions that Condor has. So the Condor concessions have not really been a focus for Soledad of late, but they're continuing their technical work there, and ultimately, we'll see where Chicana lands. On our concessions, if they complete their option, that will see them pay us, $1 million that was due last June, plus another $1 million and change next June, plus some shares to Condor, plus an NSR to Condor. So there's value there that we are able to retain, and that goes back to the project generator model of maintaining an economic interest through royalties or minority project interests with cash payments along the way to help keep corporate entity going and bring in some cash flow. So those are the 3 projects that we have JV'd so far. We've got another 7 projects that have not been optioned off or JV'd, and we're looking for partners in that regard. And we'll see what we can come up with there. That'll still be a focus for us, but those are kind of they come in spits and spats, and those are conversations that are ongoing, of course. And we'll see if we can't continue to option off some of these other projects as well.
Yes, there's more in the portfolio, and I encourage some of the audience. I don't think we're going to get to all of them today, but I encourage the audience to take a look at the website. And there's a few other projects that are in the list there that folks can take a look at. And obviously, you guys have the ability potentially to talk to other junior partners and even major partners, including folks like Teck, about maybe some of the monetization of those and how those maybe get advanced, where you guys retain interest plus get cash payments, Chris. And I think that's important, especially in these market conditions related to funding these companies here and keeping them moving along with some of the core focuses, which I want to come into here now. So you have first the Pucamayao exploration project that, of course, is being kept for in-house advancement and is the first focus of the company, next to the Winiak Punta project. Talk about first the immediate plans on Pucamayao, how the targets were selected, Chris, and what you want to accomplish on this project in the months ahead. And we'll start with that one first and then get into Winiak.
The project actually used to sit in the hands of another major who did a lot of geochemical sampling on surface, and we have all that data from the days when they walked away subsequently. But one of their geologists made the comment to one of my teammates that this was the largest lithocap alteration he'd seen in his career, and so it's about 6 square kilometers across. Sitting on the concession in around the Pucamayao east part of the concessions, and so it's a very interesting property in that there's outcropping breccias, which were really the target of the last drill program. This is in the Pucamayao East DIA, and then there's also an area to the southeast where we've applied for this DIA, where particularly interesting because I guess in both areas we have seen there's a lot of outcropping material in the east, certainly samples taken from surface where we've got granular silica on surface, we've got vuggy material on surface, meaning it's got voids in it. And when you combine that with the geophysics that we've got, but you combine it with the samples that have been taken that come back at 50 to 200 parts per billion gold, and the arsenic on surface, we'd expect to see the gold below that arsenic. We then take that and compare that to what they've had at Yanacocha. And so, of course, Yanacocha is Newmont's big gold producer in the country. It's got 12 million ounces across all categories and across the 7 pits they've got. But in particular, one of their models for exploration has been when you've got that granular silica sitting on surface and you also find 100 to 300 parts per billion gold, that's a great way to vector in on gold mineralization where it would have been concentrated below from the gold precipitating down and concentrating. So they've had, for example, at the Chaquicocha Sur pit, they've had intercepts of 165 meters of 3.5 grams per ton gold, and that's the target. That's these epithermal gold target that we're in search of, high sulfidation epithermal gold targets. And so that, I think, is what has excited certainly Quinton and the guys at Crescat. That's been certainly internally, that's why we're excited about exploring at Pucamayao. And the Southeast is going to be our core focus of the next exploration program and that the DIA we're waiting for, it's a matter of weeks until we receive that. So that's the real motivation to be exploring in the southeast at Putumayo.
Go ahead and talk about the Wynyak Punta project as well and how this is going to slot in and what we can expect to see on progress at this project, say over the next, call it 6 to 12 months as well.
Great. Well, yeah, Wynyak Punta is a high grade silver CRD type deposit, and so this resonates with me because I used to run a Senate Resources where when we had acquired the El Machito mine in Honduras, and El Machito, which has been in production since 1948, is also a CRD deposit hosted in limestone. And so, how these things are formed is that the material or the metals are in a under high pressure, high temperature in a liquid. And as that kind of comes from the source and migrates up and eats away at the limestone, the pressure drops, temperature drops, and metals get deposited. Down deep is where the heavier metals like the lead and the zinc get deposited. And as that fluid makes its way towards the surface, that's when you start to see larger deposits of silver. And so this is again, high grade silver from surface. We've got grab samples in the area. There's about a 1 kilometer long outcrop where we've taken a lot of samples out. Many are grading greater than 100 grams per ton silver on surface, and then a couple of them are 4,000 grams per ton, 3,000 grams per ton, a couple bonanza grade grabs along this 1 kilometer area, which coincides with a nice geophysical anomaly that's there. It looks to be about a kilometer wide, kilometer deep. And so the company's been working on this project for a while. Back in 2010, we did get a DIA for the area, and just based on where the mine or the project sits, which is incidentally 65 kilometers away from Antamina, so it's in a fantastic neighborhood. Because of where it sits on the map, the cultural map, we've had to go through a process called consulta previa. And this is just based, consulta previa is something that they do in Peru when your project might sit in an area that has an indigenous population or archaeological artifacts of significance, things like that. And so by virtue of sitting within this area on the map, we've had to go through this process, which has added time. I'm happy to say that all of the community consultations have taken place. We had meetings on that back in August. And so now the application's been made to the mining ministry and its subdivisions that look at consulta previa. And so we're looking for the approval of that in the short term. So again, we think it's a few weeks away, and then we will have our ability to go drill at Wynyak Punta. And so that'll be a maiden drill program, but based on the results that have come back, the geophysics, there are adits into the hill, into the side of the hill from colonial times where we can see and have been able to sample a lot of the dark gray and black sulfide material that's available at the project site. We know what we're dealing. This is a known quantity. It's a matter of how big is it. And so we're excited to get in there and drill it off. And, the maiden program will be about 1,500 meters. We'll look to poke 10 holes into this. Relatively shallow, but to understand the extent and the grades of what we're dealing with. So it's an exciting project. It could potentially be very interesting. I think that this is likely to be an underground mine as opposed to an open pit, just because of the size and potential depth. And these are all very forward-looking kind of thoughts on where this project can go, but I'm very optimistic about it.
Chris, thank you for that. Looking forward to seeing how you guys bring this one forward. And with that, on these projects, this is going to expand into the Peru discussion a little bit here in a moment. But, for some of the majors that are operating in Peru, what do you think are some of the characteristics that these folks look for in terms of size? Obviously, all of them look for de-risking, but talk about size and scale here and what you see these types of deposits. Maybe there's some comparables in Peru. What do you think they look for when a junior's out, punching holes? And if there is discovery success, what kind of size and scale do you think they're looking for to really make that move to take out that successful junior?
I think that jurisdiction and community are very important to the majors. First of all, I think they need to make sure that, and that's a big part of the due diligence, is ensuring that communities are on side. And because the worst thing you can do is walk in and try and buy a mine and and everybody, is up in arms and not in favor. And so that's definitely a huge component with respect to majors due diligence. Secondly, in terms of size and scope, I think they want to either see that it's already large or it's got the potential to grow. And so if you're looking for numbers, I mean, we're talking about multi-million ounce deposits for, a lot of the majors or even some of the bigger mid caps that would want to get involved in Peru. I think Peru is an excellent jurisdiction. So I have no, you see everybody there, certainly Newmont and Buenaventura and Anglo American, Goldfields, a lot of these companies are there, have been there, know what it's like to operate in Peru. So no issues from that perspective. Barrick had the Parina mine, which is relatively close to Putumayo and is a great comp for Putumayo. It's another one of these high sulfidation epithermal type deposits, and they're multi-million ounce type targets. So I think that Putumayo certainly has the potential to get to that scale, given the footprint of the alteration on surface and where we're finding samples from the geochemical work that's been done so far. And it certainly has a big enough footprint that it could be that big if we do indeed go and drill it off, and we could find that. So that's a very interesting project. I mean, Teck is looking at Cobre Orco, and I've already mentioned it's 2.5 kilometers wide, based on what we can see from surface in the geophysics. So I mean, that's a world-class size deposit, and there are world-class mines in Peru. There's no doubt. I mean, Antamina is the number 3 producer in the world. There's a large number of these that have secondary metals that have an impact on the market when they ramp up production, and I witnessed that back in 2018 and 19 with what happened with the zinc price going from $1.50 down into its steady decline down into the 80s, and this was some of these large mines just turning on their production. I mean, these are the kinds of mines that they have in Peru and Chile, and I think the majors are definitely always keeping an eye on what's coming up. And so does that mean that if we're having success that we're a possible target? I think that will be at some point, but until that day, we're going to continue to grow these projects and look to develop them through that whole cycle, to get them to a point where somebody's interested in doing a deal, or we can develop them ourselves. We're certainly not afraid to head in that direction. I think we need to head in that direction and then look at things as they come.
Absolutely agreed, Chris, with that thinking, and appreciate your thoughts on how they look at this. And just operatorship in Peru, I think, is, of course, a challenge. And then governmental and social acceptance, community acceptance is very important in the country as well. We've seen a number of issues there, whether it's projects that need to be developed or projects that are trying to be developed. Of course, we need these. With some of your comments on other jurisdictions, Chris, maybe just talk briefly, and if you don't mind, share a couple jurisdictions with us. You guys are, and I think you should be, in this market, open to other jurisdictions, open to transactions, because in a lot of cases there's some good value to be had out there. But just talk about maybe some of the other jurisdictions you guys would look to potentially expand into if you could find the right project and obviously the right transaction.
That's key. It's going where the opportunity is, and so I think we have a great amount of experience in Latin America, of course, across the whole team. Whether the team members are from Latin America or elsewhere, we've spent a lot of our careers in Latin America, and so that certainly would be our focus. And I think there's synergies to have if we're focused in relative proximity. I have an experience in Chile, of course, and Chile has a huge amount of mining opportunity and activity, of course. That's a great jurisdiction to be in. Certainly by North American standards, it is probably the best jurisdiction to be in from a similar regulatory perspective. I mean, Chile produces 25% of the world's copper, so it's a huge, it's got a huge resource endowment. Gold mines there, there's lithium there, there's everything there. So that's certainly definitely an area we would want to go look, or I should say be open to. Conversely, I think I've said this elsewhere, I'm not a huge fan of Argentina at this point, only because of the capital controls there, and that poses a huge challenge for being able to redeploy elsewhere. And so if you're going into Argentina, be prepared to have your dollars in Argentina for a long time. And so I would probably shy away from there. And then, other countries are somewhere else on the spectrum. definitely open to considering those as we find the projects that we do like in conjunction.
Yeah, I think it's always good to be looking out, especially in this market conditions. It makes sense as a company like Condor has opportunities to look elsewhere just to expand that pipeline, while obviously the core focus is on the two main in-house projects that you guys are working on here. We'll talk Peru a little bit more here in just a moment, Chris, but any other project specific things that are happening at the company or any other company specific work that's being done that we didn't cover here that you want to mention?
No, I think that's a very good synopsis. I mean, we're looking for, we're looking to extract value out of all of our assets. So there are huge, you've seen on the list, and if you've gone on the website, you've seen all the projects that we have, and the ones that we're calling prospective, I think are projects that we really like. They've been curated by Ever over the course of the last 10 years or so. These particular ones, they're all on the list for a reason. They've all got their own potential. And so we'll look to extract value from those in some way or another. And I don't think the market's giving us any value for them now, right? If you compare us to any other junior, once you get 3 or 4 projects down the list, they're just they're nice to haves and they're on the list, but you're not getting valued for them. And so I think that we are able to unlock value from those projects in some shape or form, over the next, 12 or 18 months. And that'll be something that I look to do. I don't really have any timelines or specifics on those, but I believe that that's, again, backstopping our valuation. When we're trading at 25 million market cap, we have so many things going on, but also so much positivity around the things we are actively focused on. It's just a huge upside from the current level. And lots of people will say the same thing, but I think that given the size of our asset base, the number of opportunities, and the abilities to pivot and focus on other things, there's optionality that other companies don't necessarily have. That's a good summation of all the additional things that we've got.
Chris, I want to have you just talk a little bit about some of the community efforts. And I know you guys are obviously exploration stage, but in a place like Peru and really a lot of places around the world, those extra efforts at the early stages really make a lot of sense towards community alignment, engagement with the community, and of course, overall acceptance of the work you guys are doing. And with that, obviously, we've seen successes and problems in Peru, Chris, with respect to, development projects are much more challenging, running a mine much more challenging. At the exploration level, I think you can have good success there as long as the community's on your side and enjoy a lot of upside if you have discovery success. But just talk about on the community side more specifically, the work you guys are doing at these earlier stages to inform local community about mineral exploration and those benefits of it, utilization of local service providers, and even job development opportunities nearby the projects. Just talk about that angle and how you see, the exploration segment in Peru in terms of getting success, getting permits, and getting down the road with respect to exploration.
Right. Well, I think just broadly speaking, the best idea is to get into community as quickly as possible once you're involved with your project area, to start having those discussions right up front. And so, keeping the community informed of our plans has always been something that we've done well. And that usually takes the form of meetings. Generally speaking, communities will have a monthly meeting. And so we'll sometimes attend those and just give them brief updates on what our plans are, what our progress is. There are more formal meetings that happen as a result of the DIA process and the consulta previa process. So multiple meetings across those fronts, and sometimes the ministry attends, but that's kind of the bare minimum. I think that getting involved, getting in front of the community right up front and communicating the intentions, but also what the process is. And so we've done a good job of that. Here's what exploration looks like. We're going to bring in, this company to drill it off. And what do? Well, they bring in small equipment that we carry in by hand. We clean up after ourselves, and we restore the environment. We remediate to exactly the way it was before. And it'll be very unlikely that you can tell that we were here, after a year goes by and everything grows back. And and then you have to deliver. And so that's the second piece, is that, inform them ahead of time and then give them a report afterwards on what the success has been and what the work was and the after state of the project. This is from the exploration context. That's on the work. With respect to the community, there are other things to be done that can benefit the community, and so specifically at Putumayo, we've erected a community center there. That was one of the things that we provided as a benefit to the community in our involvement in the project, for them to host our exploration work on our concessions. We've contributed to their medical clinic and to their educational program there, and so that's a couple of benefits for the community. And then we've hired some of the locals to help us with that remediation effort. And so we did go put together a team of 30 or so individuals, and they were helping us to reclaim the land as we were cleaning up after some of the trucks having been through and created holes and ruts in the roads and things like that. So that was another benefit for the community, and I think that they're eager to have us back as well. Like we developed a really strong relationship with the community there. They're ready for us to come back and start our next program, because they see the opportunity that the project can afford. As we do advance it, it becomes larger, it becomes more active, there's more money going into the ground, and so far, that eagerness persists, and we ourselves are eager to get back there. So this is a good news story. I think that we did a great job at Putumayo, and Winac Punta has been a little bit sleepier just because of the consulta previa process, but it's similarly just a case of continued dialogue and updates with the community leaders to let them know where we are in the process and things are advancing. So, as long as people are included in the conversation, they feel like they're involved and they have a stake in the process, and that's the important part here. And you just have to bear in mind this is a situation where the mutual respect is important, and that's how you stay on side and continue to be able to advance your projects.
Yeah, it's so important today. And the problem is, too, as you know, outside organizations, NGOs, environmental groups, et cetera, that are clearly set up and mandated to just stir the pot in the community. And they really spread misinformation as well. And so that's the other side, is when you have
It is, yeah.
community that's essentially being greased by these evil NGOs that
Yeah.
are telling a false narrative. They really are. I mean, look, there's always bad apples. Every industry has their bad apples, no doubt. But this is just stirring the pot on a larger agenda, which we can probably get into in a separate podcast. But certainly this is occurring in places like Peru. We're seeing this in a lot of jurisdictions out here, developing jurisdictions that are built on a foundation of mining and natural resource extraction, which is probably one of the best, if not the best, platform for country development of any other industry. And that's very important to have, especially if you have the mineral endowment to have such a thing. And certainly we know that there's jurisdictions that don't have those endowments. So appreciate your comments on that, how you guys are approaching this. And well, Chris, short of any other comments that you'd like to add in there, I'd like to leave it there for this introduction to Condor Resources. But just to follow up and finish up here, for potential investors who are listening in the audience, the company has a market capitalization of about 26 million Canadian dollars. Why should Condor Resources be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors' portfolio at this stage?
There's two things to say there, and I've already made some of these comments, but let's summarize it here. I think firstly, from our valuation currently, there is a lot backstopping the current level. We've got 3 deals with other companies on projects that they are advancing. Most notably, I think the upside at the Cobre is enormous with our 25% minority stake, presumptively, if Teck exercises on their option here. Secondly, we've got 2 fantastic projects in Putumayo and Winac Punta. These are valuable projects in their own right. However, we're going to be advancing those, and that's where the exploration upside comes from our activities over the course of the next couple of years. And so, we've got downside protection from the asset base across these 13 projects. We've got the ability to farm them out. We've got upside from the 2 internal projects plus the Cobre project. And I think that as a result, there's a bit of a diversified play here in terms of a resource base. But there are all these projects in Peru, which is a great jurisdiction to be in from a resource endowment perspective, as you just mentioned. And I think the team is an exceptional team, great mine finder in our VP exploration, of course. So we've got a great shot here, and I think the downside is limited. I think the upside is quite substantial. So I'm very excited about the things to come over the course of the next year or two, and I think a year from now we'll be having a very different conversation.
And Chris, how can people get in touch with the company?
Have a look at our website, condorresources.com. You can email at info@condorresources.com. We are active on Twitter and LinkedIn as well, and so we can take comments from any of those venues.
Chris, thank you for introducing us to Condor Resources. We're looking forward to following the developments at the company, and good luck on progress with the upcoming exploration work. We look forward to having you come back.
That's great, Andrew. Thank you very much for your time, everybody, and look forward to delivering on what we've set out to do here.